Hey guys, we're live. We're live. We're all here.
Well,
we're all
almost.
here.
All but Todd. Todd's still coming. He's on a slow bus.
Todd. Yeah. He's
buffering.
Gone to watch some TV, perhaps. Less stress for us, eh? All right,
he'll be back just in time to throw him under the bus.
Yeah. Be a big bus tonight too. All right. So this is Shooting the Shit, Aussie craft distillers, for those who don't know. And what it is, it's a ragtag bunch of guys who have a chat with people in the industry. And we shoot the shit. We take the conversation in whatever way it goes. There's no pre-planning. There's no script. It's just whatever. So, we hope you enjoy it. And tonight we've got our guest, Stuart, from Little Juniper Distilling in South Australia. G'day, Stuart. How are you, mate?
Good, Crafty. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Not too bad.
It's good.
And on the other side, we've got Luke, who is Bostic. He holds this whole thing together. And normally we have the Todd on, but Bostic hasn't done his job tonight. So for some reason, Todd cannot stay on. It keeps dropping out.
Yeah. NBN, I blame the government.
Blame the government. Yeah, 2 days out. No, 1 day out. 2 days out from the election. Blame the government. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Yeah, it's all their fault. It's all their fault. Kick them out, then the podcast would be better.
Yeah, solves all our problems, eh? Yeah.
But he's going to give us new cellar doors, so it's all good.
Oh yeah. All right, maybe. Let's rip into it anyway. So we start with what's everyone drinking? What's in everyone's glass? So we'll start with you, Stuart. What are you drinking, mate?
I've got a Davidson Plum Negroni. So I've got a new gin that we're bringing out, which I'm still waiting for labels on. So that one there. And I was at a bar tonight, and they're talking about making a cocktail with a Negroni, which I've just tried, and it's freaking delicious. So yeah,
very nice, very nice. Good night for a cocktail. What about you, Luke? What do you got in your glass?
I'm about to have a glass of 5 9s.
Right, South Australia again.
Yep. So also in South Australia, there we go. You can kind of see the label there. It's a bit blown out in my shitty light in my cave.
Got it.
So yeah, I was given this on the weekend, just gone, and I've been really keen to try it. So look at that. It's pretty nice. It smells amazing, and yeah, cheers. I'm very happy to be getting into this one.
Very good.
Saying to you before, look, I've got the same bottle downstairs that I nearly brought up. And then I thought, no, I'm going to have a Negroni tonight. So there you go.
Well, look, there's still time. You can dash downstairs and grab it once you finish your cocktail.
You want me to actually be talking tonight, though, don't you?
Yeah, that's generally the idea, Luke.
The hefty old Negroni. I don't make small ones, so for the end of that, I'll be a little slower.
All right, so I'm on.
What are you on? Yes.
Out of Victoria. So there was too much South Australian going on tonight, so I thought I'd bring in a Victorian, try and balance it out a bit.
So I'm not sure how balanced that is, and I'm not sure what Todd's going to drink. At the moment, he's showing me pictures of blue lights and not working lights on his NBN router. So fingers crossed he might get in.
All right, we'll see what happens. All right, well let's talk to Stuart. Let's hear about Little Juniper Distilling. So Stuart, go right back to the beginning, mate. Way before you even had conceived a distillery. Where did your interest in alcohol come from?
So that would have been when I was, well, if I go pre-distillery dream, I would have been 13. At 14, I had my first gin and tonic. Fell in love with gin.
Did you say at 14 you had your first gin and tonic?
Yeah, it was with my mum, so it's all good.
He's a bit late to it, really.
Yeah, no, sorry. And I moved out of home when I was 16. I was just finished school and was working, so lived around the corner from a local pub, which I probably shouldn't mention the name of, seeing I was a bit younger. Had a really good barman there. I remember that. I still remember it like it was yesterday. People will be sick of hearing this story, but I walked in and sort of normally I would get beer and Bundy and Coke and, rum and Coke and Jack Daniels and Coke and vodkas and lemonade and whatever. And I said, can I have a gin and tonic? And he turned around and looked at me, grabbed the bottle, old bottle of Vickers, turned the lid, and you could hear it all crystallized and crusty as he's turning it. And he said, there's other spirits your grandmother probably drinks. And I said, no, I love my gin. So he made me a gin and tonic. And then that bottle probably lasted a week, and then it was gone because I lived around the corner. I'd be there 2 or 3 times a week. And then after months and months and months, he'd start getting different bottles of gin in for me. So stuff from, this was back in the early-ish 90s, giving away my age here. But back at that time, there was nowhere near as much gin around as what there is now. So he would get in bottles from overseas and sort of educate me. So that was good. And then I think probably I wanted to distill, had a godfather who worked for Penfolds and Hardy's. So he'd always come around and make concoctions. And in the 60s and 70s, my dad and he worked at Penfolds, not far from where we are here. And they would slip in on the weekend when no one was there and make up their own wines and bottle their own wines and do their own labels. And they'd have barbecues where everyone would gather around and make their own labels and whatnot. So it was always, even though my parents weren't big drinkers, I think that alchemy of what you can do with alcohol was always interesting to me. So I think around 2000 I moved to Brisbane for work, was there for 10 years. And in that time, probably prior to that, I was brewing beer at home, and then got into some other things in Brisbane, was brewing an alcoholic ginger beer that was about 14%, which everyone loved. And at that time, now my ex-wife, my father-in-law, had a little T500, I think it was, and was making spirits, but it was all sort of with the bought flavorings and things you'd get. And he'd make stuff up for me and oak it and, put your little wood chips in there. And it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And at that time, I've always wanted to try my hand at distilling, but it was just too expensive. So then come forwards to 2019, divorced, my kids moved to Tassie, and school holidays, they get 3 months off a year, I get 4 weeks, and that's it. So the kids would come back here, I'd run out of holidays. So I decided I need to be self-employed. So the plan was to build up my own little media agency. And then basically the funds from that would then help fund a distillery, which is supposed to be another 5 to 10 years away. And then good old COVID hit. Literally the week my non-compete clause had ended, and I was supposed to start my media agency. So I was sitting there going, fuck, I've just spent 3 months sitting on my ass planning this business. What am I going to do now? Long story short, I had a business mentor. He worked in the wine industry for my media business, which was kind of funny. And he had a look at my business plan and said, look, I think you need to put your media thing aside, go off for 2 weeks, work on your business plan for this little distillery you want to do, and send it off to me, and I'll tell you what I think. So I spent 2 weeks from 7 a.m. till it was like 3 a.m. every night for literally 14 days. My family, friends were like, what are you doing? I'd tell them, and they go, oh, you're fucking crazy. Don't do that. You've been in this other industry for 25 years. What are you doing? And I was like, no, I need to know. I've got all these ideas. I want to get it onto paper. 2 weeks later, sent it off to him, and he said to me, I think you need to put your media business on the back burner. This COVID thing could last another 6 weeks, and start working on your distillery. 6 weeks turned into 2 years, and here we are. So, yeah. Long story short.
So your distillery really is a COVID baby.
Yeah, which has got its benefits. How many times in your life is the government going to say to you, you've literally got to sit at home for 12 months and not do anything? And it was great. But at the same time, launching a gin during COVID is not so great. I have no idea what it's like to launch something into the liquor industry in normal times. So it's, even getting into winter now, gin normally dies off. And now they're finding that a lot of the bars are ordering more stock. People we've been talking to that were scared to order stock are now ordering. Online sales are going through the roof because everyone's going out and they're sort of not worried about the fact it's winter. We missed out in summer, so let's party. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
it's very much happening, isn't it? Things are opening up. The bar scene's starting to open up again. And as you said, people are now starting to put the orders in, and people are now also got this greater experience of drinking at home. So it's a bit of a double whammy right now, isn't it? Yeah, which is
I mean,
good
if you
for the likes
if
of us in our industry.
even it's Todd. Even if you go back 5 years ago, you look at the cocktail scene. The cocktail scene has always been there, but not so much at home. Whereas now, I've got friends that have got a bigger collection of liquor than I've got. I'm in the industry. You go into their place and it's like, right, we're making up all these cocktails. Whereas in the past, people just wouldn't have done that. So COVID's probably helped in that sense, I suppose. But that then affects your customers, the bars and the hotels and whatnot, because people they're getting out now, but in the last 2 years, they're reasonably happy to sit at home and make their own things and do their own stuff, which isn't great for our customers.
Yeah, it's true.
The ability to drink at home and have that selection, your own collection and whatnot. I mean, you can see mine in the background there. Have just your very small circle of friends. Like the what was it? The 2 adults and 1 kid that you could have, or 2 kids come around at one point in lockdown, and you would just sit there and experiment. You would try different things you hadn't tried before, and that almost became the norm for us, particularly. Going out feels a little alien these days.
Yeah,
but maybe
it
I'm
is
showing my age.
No, I was actually saying to someone this afternoon, I was driving back from seeing some potential customers in town, some new bars, and I was driving back and someone was talking to one of my suppliers and saying how sales are picking up. And he said, it's kind of weird when you go out now, it feels like something really special. And I had the same thing. I was out a couple of nights ago. It was out at a club and a lot of music, a lot of young people. I was probably the oldest guy there, but it felt fantastic. It's, I'm out and about and it's 2:00 in the morning. What's going on? I feel like I'm 20 years old again. But it just going out for dinner, it does feel like something special. Whereas 2 years ago, I think we all took that for granted.
100%.
The energy's come back for sure. Yeah. So let's talk about the company and so you're very gin focused. Why is that? It's very 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 narrow spirit. So you've sort of locked into that for a period of time, and you want to do other things in the future. Is that the plan?
Yeah, I mean the thing I love the flavor of gin. Don't get me wrong. It's got nothing to do with a business decision. It's more a passion for me. But I love the experimentation that you can partake with gin. With guys probably know that follow us is I do a lot of stuff with rotary evaporation as well, so vacuum distillation. So our signature gin that is purely I think my camera's back to front. So that is a traditional gin. So that's distilled in our copper still. But then we've got a whole range that I want to do that'll be a vacuum distilled, so a cold distilled range of gins and liqueurs as well. So eventually we'll move into that and we get the cellar door set up hopefully in 12 months, hopefully. We'll have a lot of cocktails that we're going to make with our own shrubs and different liqueurs and things that we'll use to make as well. So, it's at a point where I love those things that can accompany a gin that you can use to make cocktails, but a lot of them, it's not viable to go into the market. It's bloody hard enough selling a good gin, let alone selling a $14 bottle of bitters or something like that. But we'll use them in the distillery. And then I think in the future, we've just ordered 2 fermenters with our new still. So I love rum as well. And I love the fact that within reason, you can be pretty experimental with rum in a way that you can be with whiskey, etc. But that's different. It's more your yeasts, your aging, what barrels you're using and things like that. Whereas rum is similar, but then there's also the fruits that you can use with that as well. So I can see myself sort of getting into that in the future. But the business is named Little Juniper for a reason, and that is because our core business is gin. Yeah.
And so talking about the process there, where you're talking about the vacuum distillation.
Yeah.
Is that something you're doing on site, or do you outsource that component of things? How does the vacuum, or how will that work?
Yeah, so no, we've initially, while I was waiting for the parts for my still to come, because we customize that here in Australia, worked with a local stainless steel fabricator and cut up parts that we ordered for a still. Sorry?
So you're working with a local steel maker?
Stainless steel fabricator.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So we ordered the parts from overseas, got them here, and then literally sacrilegiously cut everything up and rebuild it for what we wanted it to do, and it's worked perfectly. So it was interesting. Before, like, I had a plan of what I wanted to do with this still, little 200-litre still we've got at the moment. We just ordered a 1,000-litre still, but we've been using the little 200-litre still. And working with him, he's worked for distillers and brewers in the past and said, this is what you're doing is a little different. It's not out of the norm. The way you're designing things a little bit different. How do you know all this is going to work? And I said, well, physics, a lot of experimentation through what I've read and seen says it should work. And he says, so have you used a still like this before? And I was like, mate, I've never distilled in my life. What? Surely you've done something at home, a little dodgy thing in the background. And I said, no, as soon as I talked about that, doing it, it just came to fruition that I needed to do this properly and just start a business. So literally we built the still. The first time I ran it was just with a rough sugar wash, came out, everything worked, and then ran this gin recipe through it, which I had to scale it up. So I basically ran it, could taste the flavor wasn't right, stopped it, adjusted some things in the gin basket, and it ran, and sent him off this bottle and just went, holy shit, you made this out of that thing that we put together. So but before that, I had been working with some guys based in Sydney. So they use a company called Heidoff, which is a German company. Usually rotary evaporators are used in science labs. Adelaide Uni uses them here. They're pretty jealous because I've got better gear than them. And then over that year, or probably within the first 3 months while I was waiting for the still to come over and we rebuilt that was probably a 6-month process. I was distilling botanicals in the rotovat, making gin recipes at different temperatures. So you can run it like a traditional still. You can run it at 100 degrees, whatever you want. And then it got to the point where my girlfriend at the time would be taking all these gins into her and she'd go, no, that shit's not gin. Go back again, start again. So I just stopped and decided, right, for the next 6 months, especially with COVID, I thought I'm going to distill a heap of botanicals. I had a goal to distill 100 botanicals. I ended up distilling nearly 300. So I spent 6 months every day from 8 a.m. I was in there till about 3 a.m. For 6 months, 7 days a week, distilling all these different botanicals and building a library up, but distilling them at different temperatures and at different vacuum pressures. So I knew how that botanical was going to work, from juniper berries to, I distilled a Mars bar at one point, just all sorts of just to know how those botanicals worked. And then I said, right, I want to make a proper London dry. What's the base of a London dry? I wrote it down. I said, but with me, it's got to be something a little different. So I looked at all the botanicals that I was working with, what complements them, how they work, different ratios, wrote it down on a piece of paper, put it in the rotovat, and out came the signature gin. And basically, obviously I had to change that when we then went to the larger 200-litre still. But with what I taught myself about how these botanicals work over time, so some of them I distill, the rotovap, it might take 45 minutes and you could distill a litre. So some of them I would distill in the rotovap, but get them to distill for 3 hours. So I knew, like, say for star anise, for example, you could distill a freaking star anise and the flavour would still be coming out 2 weeks later. It's nuts. So, when you put that in a still and you're running it for 6 to 8 hours, that botanical is just, its flavour is going to keep going. So I need less of it than I need of this, etc. So that 6 months of using that rotovap and distilling all those separate botanicals sort of educated me on what I need to do to make, a recipe as it were. And the signature gin came out at 21 botanicals, which I cop a lot of shit from distillers. They're like, oh, 21 botanicals. And then they taste it and they go, okay, now I can see what you're doing. So it's sort of a gin. I wanted to make a gin that you could drink neat. So hence you've got that star anise, licorice, fennel, 60% juniper berry, native pink peppercorn. So you've got that natural sweetness. And then, most people are going to drink with tonic. So we've got the fruits in there that work with them, a bit of lavender that helps bind everything together. So yeah, I love the science of it, and that's probably what I spend most of my time doing in the distillery. If I'm distilling a batch of this gin that I'm playing on the rotovap, we've got a commercial rotovap which we kind of have been lent a 20-litre rotovap, and then High Dolph said, we want you to make a cold distilled gin. It's like, great. I was using that gear, and it's like, it's still going to take me too long to make something on a commercial quantity. So we then talked about developing what I call a maceration tank that feeds the rotovap. So that gets here tomorrow or the day after. So they've designed what they call a reactor, because it sounds better. So it's basically this 100-litre reactor that sits behind with an agitator. It's heated. It can be vacuum. You can pull pressure on it, so it can have a vacuum as well. And then we'll reprogram the larger rotovap to suck that in, distill it, spit it out, suck in a new lot, distill it, spit it out. So then we've pretty much set up a continuous distillation method for vacuum distilling.
Wow.
And then you could have 10 of those maceration tanks set up with all different types of ingredients in them.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So
The
that's
possibilities there boggle the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's odd. There are other people, a couple of distillers and barmen that are doing or trying similar things through what they've seen me doing. And it's, they're sort of asking how you can get that flavor out of something. But it's like the easiest analogy I can give you is it's like me giving you a Greek salad that's nice and fresh. It's just come out of the fridge. It's nice and crispy. You're eating it. Or I cook that for 6 hours and then I give it to you. But then if I give you a fresh potato and tell you to eat that, I go and cook it for an hour or however long and give it to you as a nice soft potato with a bit of butter. What are you going to prefer? So there's certain botanicals that like heat. There's others that the idea of it is to be able to make something that's unique because another distiller can't add that herb or that flower or that plant to a still because the heat's just going to kill off that flavor. So something that's a really delicate flavor you can then distill. Yeah, that's the idea.
Wow. So aside from a Mars bar being a pretty fucking weird thing to distill,
I knew you were going to ask this.
What else have you found? Well,
do you know,
did you drop a Mars bar in there? I guess, but
yeah, I had to melt it up first, pretty much. Otherwise, it made a freaking mess. It took me ages to clean that thing out. I'm not doing it.
I bet. Yeah.
Although the commercial rotovap, the flask on it's got an opening like that, you can put your arm in. Whereas my normal one, it's like that. So I had to liquidize the Mars bar to get it in there. And then when I'd finished, I was like, "How the fuck do I get that out?" It was pretty messy. It didn't taste great either. Probably the weirdest thing.
Then a Mars bar, because what are you getting out of a Mars bar when you distill it?
Well, the idea is just to get that flavor, that caramel and the chocolate come across and whatnot. But that's the hard thing. You can distill a fruit with ethanol, or you can use it to clarify things. So I could take a fruit juice in there, or I could put a whiskey in there and have that come out tasting exactly the same, but it's clear. There's no color to it. So,
Right.
well, it'll taste exactly the same, but it's pretty bloody close.
Wow.
So, like the Davidson plum gin I made up a batch of that and then ran that through the still just to clarify it and see what the flavor would be like. And it's like, it's missing something. But there was this really thick red substance left over, like this gum, and the flavor in that was freaking insane. It was like, that's the stuff that doesn't carry across. It's the natural sugars and the sweetness and the acidity and whatnot sometimes doesn't come across. Probably the coolest thing I've distilled was, I don't know if you guys, we call them here in South Australia, they're called sour sobs.
Yeah.
So, when you go to the park and you get that long green stream with the yellow flowers and the
yellow flower on it,
suck on them and they're really bitter. The flavor out of them was fantastic, but then I was like, well, how do I get a commercial amount of this? There's plenty of parks around me, but how do I know which ones haven't been peed on by dogs? I was like, all right, so that is the problem with
that's
the
half the flavor. That's half the
well,
flavor.
if you have a umami flavor, there's that saltiness that came through, so I might have gotten the right patch. Yeah.
That's where the yellow comes from on the flowers.
But that is the problem with having the rotovap. It really expands your mind on what you can do and what you can create. But I've had, flowers, edible things, obviously, flowers and leaves and things like that I've distilled, and the flavor comes out. And it's just this fantastic pepperiness. But then you look at, if I make this gin and it does well, and we need commercial quantities, heavens forbid I ever turned into 4 pillars. That'd be great, maybe. How do you literally be growing a farm of these flowers just to get that? So it makes it a little bit difficult. Yeah, I've sort of come back to reality now, and I just distill things I know that I can do in a large quantity.
Well, I guess that's half the fun of it, isn't it? Finding out what does work, what are the possibilities, and I guess you can leave the door open for small batch stuff in the future as well, with those weird and wonderful
fingers
things.
crossed. And I shouldn't be saying this, I'm probably going to jinx myself. We're just taking a lease on a 20-acre farm about 20 minutes out of the city.
That's a lot of soursop.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just picturing this field of soursops and me out there with a lawnmower and then adding, throwing the catch into the still. So yeah, so we've got a lot of work ahead of us in the next year, hopefully, if all goes well.
Wow. So is that purely off the back of the success of the signature gin?
Yeah, well, that's all we've had out in the market. When you say that success of it, it's not like sales have been huge because of COVID. But I believe in what I'm doing, and it's my whole life.
It's giving you the confidence to take that.
Yeah, my other business has been put to sleep. So I'm, as of about 6 months ago, I'm full-time Little Juniper. So yeah.
Is it just yourself, Stuart, or are there other people involved in the business?
Yeah, about 6 months ago, I took on Christina. So she's a brand ambassador and helps with sales. So she works with myself, 3 other distilleries and a winery. So financially, it's really affordable. Obviously, if I had a rep that was just Little Juniper rep, your sales would be better. But then there's those initial costs as well. And, we've gone through that that planning phase. We've got a 10-year plan, which will probably change next week because everything's got to be pretty organic, as you would know. But in that plan, there is to, once we've got the cellar door, the possibility of getting investors on board. We've nearly went there, but we pulled back because I want to keep control until we're ready to open that cellar door. And, you've got something more to offer. And at that point, we'll get some investors in to help build the business. Yeah. And the idea of that will be then to have another distiller I can work with, someone that's going to run our bar, but that barman will almost be a distiller in themselves, because just the nature of, I could probably have 10 more gins out at the moment, but I enjoy playing too much. So the amount of bitters and things, the non-gin related things that I'm making and experimenting with, give me just as much enjoyment as creating a gin. What I can mix with my gin to do something new and to create something new is just as exciting as making another gin. So, which is not good. It's a problem, because I should have 3 or 4 more gins out there at the moment. But the idea is that once we've got the cellar door, we can offer people things that they can't get elsewhere. There's some funky cocktails with something that we've distilled. We'll have a still, basically, that little roto vat that the barman can use as well, the bar team. But also working with those guys on new recipes. So it's, even if the cleaner's got a good idea, I want to hear about it. So it's having that team of people. I'm really looking forward to it. I might actually get more than 3 hours sleep a night, which would be great. So,
or less.
Possibly, yes. I have thought about that side of it. But no, I love working with people. So,
well, that certainly does help. We've had a couple of interesting comments come through from Rosemary at Black Snake. I think I might put a Mars bar in the next Kangaroo Pachuga.
I wouldn't recommend it.
It'd be interesting. And to follow that up, William Rules. Skippy wouldn't feel like himself until he had a Snickers.
That one requires some explanation, I think.
Well, I'm thinking that it's along the lines of the Kangaroo Pachuga, substituting out, and Snickers being better than Mars bars, just quietly. Question come through from Simon Gallagher. Out of interest, how many gin flavors is enough?
Yeah, it's a tough. I could have released 10 by now, but I am seriously fussy, and it's everything we release. It's going to take time to make and perfect. It's nothing. I've probably got 50 gins that I've made in a shelf downstairs, and some of them every once in a while, some of them are 2 years old now, and I pull it out. Like the very first gin I made was a lemon myrtle gin, and it's like lemon myrtle off the wall. And a friend of mine said, I want to taste the first gin you've ever made. And I was like, yeah, great. So we poured some G&Ts and had it, and it's freaking delicious. It's like lemonade, like alcoholic lemonade. It tastes so good. But there's so much lemon myrtle out there. At that point, I was just like, no. I've got some gins I've made with butterfly pea that I'd looked at releasing, and then 2 other South Australian distilleries released that butterfly pea literally like a week. I was about to get my labels made. I was like, fuck it, I'm not doing it now. So that's been put off to the side. So yeah, for me, it's about making, I think if you're going to release anything to the market these days, it's got to be something that you're confident is going to win some awards and is going to do well, because there is, in the gin industry, as you guys would know, it's just flooded. There's so much out in the market at the moment. So I don't want to release something that's, half-assed, and I enjoy experimenting too much to, quickly release something. It's always going to be something that's a little complex and different. Yeah.
So given that there is so much gin out there and so much new gin being released every day, when you've got the punter standing in the bottle shop looking at this wall going, which one do I buy? How do you stand out?
Yeah, branding. I mean, that's the other thing I'd say to people is branding is number one. I'm lucky enough that, in the last 25 years, I've worked in film and TV, visual effects, media, the computer game industry. So everything for me was visual. This is the first tangible thing I've made in my life that's not on a freaking screen. It's, it's so nice to actually hold that and to be able to watch someone drink it and see their reaction. When you work on a Hollywood movie, it's great to see your name up in the titles, but you look and no one's going, oh, Stuart McKinn. They don't know who the hell people are. They don't know whether you're American, Australian, whatever. And it's not an ego thing. It's just that pride of making something that people notice that stands out. I know when I first released our gin, I went to a couple of bars and I'd pull the bottle out of the bag, and I remember Marcus at Haynes and going, fuck, we'll take it. And I was like, you haven't even tried it yet. And he goes, I don't care. I want that bottle on my bar. I was like, why? And that is just a stunning label that suits our bar to a T. That's a 3D render, by the way, so it's not an actual photo. People keep asking me that.
It looks very realistic.
Yeah, I can see the faults in it, but I pick everything.
Yeah, but you'd be your own worst enemy in that regard. You don't need to tell people that is a 3D render.
I know. I'm too honest. I'm an open book.
From a design standpoint, it really pops, though, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. It's hard. Everyone said to me, "Don't use gold foil," and I was like, "No, it can work if it's contrasty." There are some instances where I'll see it sitting on the shelf in a bottle shop, and they've got really bad lighting, and it's like it just dims it a lot, which is always a shame. But yeah, I like it. It's sort of, for me, it harks back to that, I suppose, the Gatsby era when you had Prohibition, everyone was partying. We've come out of Prohibition. Gin was a big thing. And to me, that's kind of the renaissance we've had in the last almost 10 years. It's like that gin renaissance all over again. It is the most versatile spirit you can use for cocktails and everything. So, it doesn't surprise me, as you were talking before, that the cocktail, I suppose, love for people has come back. But yeah, getting back to the branding, that for me, it was the first time that I actually got to create something for myself that wasn't for someone else. And then you have, the frustration of when you're working for an agency, even when you've got your own agency and you've got a client and you go to them with this fantastic idea. You've got 50 people behind you that are working for you that just love it. They're like, man, this is awesome. You go and the client can't see it. They just can't. They're not a visual person. You do all you can with storyboarding and show them, and they're just not right. And then they ask for something that you really don't want to make. That really sucks. That's really tough. Yeah.
Been there.
It's like, trust me, this is going to work. But no, not always. So yeah, it's I'm pretty happy with it. It's definitely kept me busy. So all the 3D stuff I do as well. I've got some guys that I work with the industry help out a little bits and pieces here and there. But yeah, it'd be just good to have more hours in the day to do more of it.
Now, it would be nice to try something that I haven't actually tried on the stream before, but I'm going to see whether I can actually show your website, because it's one that I really, really like. And as a website person myself, that was a bit loud. I think you've done a fantastic job. Let me see if I can hit the share button. Share.
I can hear a cricket somewhere. Is that?
I think that's my resident cricket.
Oh, okay. Because there was some audio.
not
There was some audio on this video.
Yeah, I might have one or two outside as well.
There you go. So, how long did it take to train the butterfly to sit there that long?
Oh, the little bugger wouldn't. Yeah, it was really hard. It was, but all I had to do was put a couple of drops of that gin on there and get him a little merry, and he just sat there for ages until he finally fell off and landed on the ground.
That's where he gets his butterfly pee from.
Yeah, that was the dribble on the other end as it came out. There you go.
Very good, Todd.
Special gin, special release. You know, you've got the coffee beans that the cats eat and poo out. We've now got butterfly pee. There you go.
You know, it's not a botanical as such. And then of course a little bit of color and movement there with the the water under the signature. I just thought that was fantastic. So you've won a few awards in your short time.
Yeah, I've won a couple.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you've been going. So when you first went to market, how long has it been since you first put it out?
A year and a half, but probably a year in the proper market. So a year and a half ago, I had my stoppers were stuck in Portugal for bloody 6 months nearly. So a year and a half ago, I bottled everything. I think it was Christmas. A year and a half ago, Christmas, I had 220 pre-orders, and I literally spent the 23rd and the 24th like freaking Santa Claus driving around South Australia hand delivering these bottles, because I said to everyone, yes, you're going to have them for Christmas. Half of them are Christmas gifts. It was actually the first lot of bottles I delivered was at 6 o'clock in the morning in a suburb not far from here. And it was 4 bottles and bags. I dropped them off and they heard the jingling, but the kids went outside. Like, Santa Claus was here, we can hear jingling. And they walked back in with these bags of gin going, Santa Claus has spread his presents. And the father came in and said, no, they're my freaking presents, not yours. Little story. I was trying to be quiet and wake everyone up. So it was like, it was like 6 a.m. till bloody 11 o'clock at night delivering people. And everyone wants to talk to you. And it's like, I can't, I've got 3 minutes to get to the next place. I've got to go. So yeah, pretty much a year and a half in the market. And then after that was online sales. And then we slowly sort of got out into bars. And it was interesting. I had Marcus from Haynes & Co. sort of saying to me, how many bottle shops are you in? And it's like, yeah, I've got to start looking at bottle shops. And he's like, mate, we are a feeder to the bottle shops. The amount of people that are coming in and trying your gin and saying, where do I get it from? So it was that fine line of being in a couple of bottle shops and then getting into bars, which then talk about your gin and then feed into bottle shops as a whole. I mean, making the stuff is the easy bit. Selling it is the hardest, definitely, by far. It is, you know, you could win triple golds and everything. Well, maybe that would make a difference, but yeah, it doesn't matter how many awards you win. Nobody really cares about them. For me, it was knowing that what I'm making is of a quality that someone's doing a blind tasting from overseas as a professional and they say it's good, and also getting the notes. I thought the notes would be great, but the notes on my gin are so incorrect. It's not funny because that's 21 botanicals confuses a bejesus out of everyone. You know, you get these great notes and they're saying, oh, maybe you could do this, you could do that, and then you'd get a double gold. And it's like, that's not even in my gin. They just get pretty, especially Americans, because there's, you know, you've got a lot of botanicals in there, not necessarily Australian, but you've got pink peppercorn and things like that. But I think a lot of their gins are pretty much your London Dry standard, whereas this is definitely not.
So another question's come in from William. Have you worked with Kwandongs?
Not yet. I've got a Kwandong dealer. But I played around years ago with Kwandong Jam, and there's you don't get much out of them. So that's something that we will be doing. Yeah.
It's a bit weird saying I'm just going to call him a dong dealer.
Yeah, the dong dealer. Oh dear.
I tickle myself.
It's interesting when you like, I've literally the amount of fruit and things I get offered or get dropped off to me, and the most obscure stuff. It's incredible. You know, someone will find, because I know what I'm like literally I'll go for a walk with my dog and I'll smell something and I'll spend 15 freaking minutes trying to figure out where that smell's coming from. It drives me nuts. But people know that I'm like that, so they will find something and then bring it to me, and it's like, this is great. What is this? Oh yeah, there's this tree only makes 4 of these a year, and there's like 1 tree in South Australia. It's like, well, don't show me that. That's not fair.
Yeah.
So,
Not quite practical, is it?
yeah, exactly.
So, did you get the opportunity to wander around Gin Palooza, which is where I met you, and see what the competition's doing?
A little bit, not as much as I would have liked to, but a little bit, yeah. It was interesting.
Because there was certainly some interesting botanicals being used, and in my conversation with walking around, chatting with as many people as I could whilst getting quite well loaded, a lot of it I don't remember, but I guess one of the most consistent things that I saw was everyone saying that we use only Australian botanicals.
Yeah.
Or 100% Australian botanicals, or we've got X amount of botanicals in there.
Yeah.
Do you think it starts to lose its meaning after a little while?
I don't know how you use 100% botanicals because no one's growing juniper berry there, but there are in Australia. But there are a lot of gins out there that I think there would be 1,000 litres of alcohol, and they drop a juniper berry in there and call it gin. So, I'm a bit against that. I'm a bit old fashioned. Our gin's 60% of our botanical load is juniper berry. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, my lemon myrtle gin. I started thinking this whole business was going to be Australian. It was going to be, Australian glass, Australian corks, Australian labels, Australian this, Australian that. You try to get anything in Australia, it's near impossible unless you're a winery. And then yes, you can get it. There's just not enough distilleries. Well, there hasn't been in the past to warrant the number of manufacturing needs. So the same thing for botanicals. I think you could. For me, it is making a traditional base and then adding that Australiana to it. I think it's worth doing. Otherwise, your gin's almost shying away from being a gin, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how do you feel about barrel-aged gins?
Oh, that's a tough one. I was given my barber, who's Greek, he gets people just literally, his barber shop is like a museum. People just dump stuff in there. He's got all these collectibles. He's got some bottles of, he doesn't even drink, or he actually drinks my gin, but nothing else. He's got bottles of spirits and all sorts of stuff. And he has a little port keg out the back because he knows I love port. So when I get a haircut, I get my little glasses of port. And I was in there, I don't know, last year, and he had this little Italian oak barrel. And I said, what's that one got in it? And he goes, nothing, it's new. I said, what are you going to do with it? And he goes, I don't know. Someone dropped it off here. And I looked at it, and it was a good brand. And he goes, can you use it? I was like, do you know what? I could oak some of my gin and see what it's like. And it was, you get those flavors, like over that period of time, you just go, oh, that was a waste of 6 liters of gin. And then 2 weeks later, it's like, oh my God, that's fantastic. Another 2 weeks, oh, it tastes like shit. So it just went through all of those different flavor profiles. And then in the end, I left it in there too long. The flavor was fantastic, but I've got a Christmas gin I made up, dumped it in there, and it worked really well. So making a barrel-aged gin, it depends. If you're going to put gin in a barrel that's had whiskey or bourbon or rum in it, then is it gin anymore? It is, they do taste a little more like whiskey, rum, or bourbon or whatever they've been put in. So I think it depends on what you're going to do with it. I think having a port or a sherry barrel would be great, and doing some of that. I know, which is really odd because I love my ports, and you think port would be sweeter, but I know sherry barrels work better with that. So I'm not against barrel aging, but it just depends. If you're putting, like I said, if you're putting gin in a barrel that's had whiskey in it and there's still whiskey in it that tastes like whiskey, then I probably don't understand the point. But each their own.
Yeah, it's a question of balance, isn't it?
It is. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Particularly with the gin, you've got to have a gin which is going to punch through and work well with what's been in the barrel before. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that is the good thing about our signature gin. It is very punchy. We do a one-shot distillation method, so you guys know what that is. So it comes out, there's a absolute bucket load of flavor in there. So whatever you mix it with, it never disappears. It's always there. And it really did work well on the oak. I was surprised. It kept its flavor. Some other people tried it and they were just like, wow, it just added this sort of woodiness and this caramelization that I couldn't have got any other way. So in that sense, yeah, great. But it was a new barrel. It did not have anything in it, so it's not picking up whiskey or those rum flavors or anything. If I want that, I'd rather get good whiskey, I think.
Could you?
I've got on tonics. I'm quite interested in this. So most people, when you talk about gin, they think gin and tonic, and they just put tonic into a box. Tonic's tonic, but as we know, tonic's not tonics. There's all sorts of different tonics. So how do you work with the minefield that is tonics? And
yeah, it's a good question. It's. I mean, I wish Fever Tree's Mediterranean tonic. That stuff's like some dark science. It seems to work with everything. It's really good. It's it is sweet, but it's not overly sweet. There are some older people that love my gin, and they will have it with Schweppes, and I just it's like, okay, it's an old school tonic, but it's just full of sugar. My gin still works with it, but try this. And they go, I'm not spending that in the tonic. As soon as they try it, they're like, oh my God, that's just next level. So, like we did the event in Sydney, and Longrays, when we first launched, I think Longrays came out and they had a tonic and a soda, and I was desperate to use them because they're great guys. They're Australian based, sorry. But that tonic didn't quite work with our gin because our gin is quite rich. And then at the event, just before the event, they had a rep come over with a heap of their different tonics and the cola that they've done as well. And they've got a new Pacific tonic, which is like Mediterranean, but it's lighter and less sugary. And that was just fantastic. So I think part of the big resurgence with gin is thanks to tonics, decent tonics being out there. There are so many great brands out there doing different things. You got some tonics that some of them I've tasted. I think I can't think of many gins that will go with, but then we mix our gin with it, and it's like, holy crap! It does something else to it. It brings out all of these other profiles and botanicals in our gin that I can tell it kind of lets certain things amplify, which I find is really exciting. But with maybe a standard London Dry, it might get lost in that. So yeah, I enjoy tonics just as much as I do exploring with gin, to the point where I even thought about making my own, but I think there's people out there that are doing it pretty well, and there's only so many hours in the day as well. So, gin.
Indeed. Now, certainly there were some great tonics at Gin Palooza. So Long Days certainly were the sponsor. I think they take away from Longrays. Sorry, they took it away from Fever Tree, didn't they?
Possibly, I
think. Know. And then there was Waterhole.
So Waterhole, Waterhole had some really interesting tonics. There was one that mixed with my gin. It was like it had this almost like a coconut flavor come through, but it has basil in there, no coconut. And I'm like, it's got to be coconut. Yeah. Like, no. So they were sending a heap of people over to us. They'd come over with their little cups, and they'd try the tonic. They go, oh, it's okay. And then we'd put our gin in. They're like, oh my God, that's just incredible. So the flavors, like these almost caramelization that came through, was fantastic. It was really interesting. But not, to most people who are your straight gin and tonic aficionados, they're going to go, well, that's not a proper tonic. But it's to me, it's creating a cocktail almost. It's doing something really different, really funky. So with the right gin, they were really interesting tonics. I hadn't tried them before.
Yeah. I think I first tried them at the craft booze markets. Yeah. Todd and I were there doing a stall for Craftworks, and they were there, and I think I took home a box of it.
Yeah. Well, I meant to, and I forgot when I left because you're too busy packing up. And you turn around, everyone's gone. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
All the other distillers.
Absolutely. So on tonics, I've just poured myself a one that I did find at the at Gin Palooza, which is Gin Fusion. God, my lighting is terrible today.
Right.
So.
Can't quite
get completely blown out. Gin Fusion is the blood orange with Japanese yuzu.
Ooh, yum.
Which is really quite nice. And I've just paired it with a Cappy Dry.
Yeah, so Cappy Dry works really well with our gin as well. Even the, what's the other one? The Cappy, the yellow bottle. It's their normal. It's like they're Indian, but there's less sugar. Plus they're Australian, which I like. But yeah, I mean, it is a tough one. I don't have a favorite. It's, it is a lot of it. I think the Fever Tree Mediterranean works really well. The Fever Tree ginger beer. So we do what we call a little mule, which, thanks to our online bartender Matt, is basically, it's a Moscow Mule but with our gin, and that is just freaking fantastic. We do events and we'll have cocktails where there's gin and tonic or a little mule, and that event might go for 4 hours. For 2 hours, everyone's drinking gin and tonics, and then one person will come up and say, "Can I try a little mule?" And you go, "Sure," and you make them one up. 15 minutes later, everyone's drinking little mules. No one's ordering gin and tonics. It's just, it's so different. So their ginger beer I love because it's really nice and peppery. Then they've got an elderflower tonic, which with our gin is just to die for. It's really good as well. So
it sounds like your gin goes with pretty well any tonic.
It does, but I do find some that are a little lighter that my gin overrides. Normally the tonic overrides the gin, whereas our gin will override it. Not that many, and then I love a Sonic as well. So half tonic, half soda water. When you're trying to watch calories.
A Sonic. Yeah. That's what
Sonic.
It's a thing. It's a thing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
You learn something new.
I was drinking a lot of gin with soda because I was putting on weight, which now since starting Little Juniper, I put on about 15 kilograms because I'm just working so much. You'd think you'd lose weight, but it's not the case. I'm
quality control.
What I'm making. Yeah, exactly. There's nothing like your own gin when it comes off the still at 91%. Oh, beautiful. Although I think that might be the reason for my indigestion lately. But yeah, it's I think tonics play a big part, definitely.
So I think in a couple of weeks we're talking to Lindsay from Down Gin Lane. Gin subscription service. So I'm going to be interested to sort of hit him up about how he selects his gins to go in it when there is such a huge market. When
put in a good word for us.
I might do that. we were actually meant to have Crafty's got something better to do that night. So we were meant to have Ali from Karoo on.
Ali is, yep.
Yep. But now she's got something better to do. So it's just going to be you and me, Todd.
Oh, well, I'll be fine. I'm talking to Lindsay.
Yeah, wing it.
Lindsay likes bagging out goggles anyway, so.
Say it.
Lindsay likes bagging out biggles anyway.
I have to do it.
Yeah. I don't lose them. I don't lose my glasses now.
No.
That's the reason I got them. They're big. I can't lose them.
And no one wants to steal them. So what's next?
Where do you want to go overseas, Stuart?
Sorry?
Yeah, where do you want to go overseas? Where, from a gin perspective, what's exciting you going overseas?
Just going to Sydney was exciting for me. 2.5 years of being stuck in Adelaide. Shit, no, I love Adelaide. Adelaide's a beautiful place. That's a tough one. I'd love to go to Scotland to do a lot of the whiskey distilleries, and it's an odd question for me. It would be anywhere really. It's like it doesn't matter whether it's a rum distillery, a whiskey distillery, a vodka distillery, a gin distillery. It's that science behind it that I love, the people that I love. It's an awesome industry. It's having I'm going to cop a lot of grief for this, but having worked in the advertising and marketing industry, your best friend will stab you in the back to take your client. When I first mentioned that I was launching Little Juniper and it was like, hey, we're about to bottle our first batch of gin, I had 2 distilleries here in Adelaide say to me, hey, bring your ethanol up to us. We'll bottle it and we'll label it for you because we know you're doing it on your own. That's a shit of a job. I was like, no. I've got to figure out what it's like. I've got to do everything myself. At the end of it, I was like, fuck that. Next time, if anyone offers, no one has, I'm sending it off. It is a bugger of a job, as you guys know. It is the industry, even overseas. It's like I don't know how, but I got into a Facebook group where it's a bunch of, I didn't know, but it's I can't remember the name of it. It changed. It's something is about botanicals, but it's about all these crazy botanicals that are used. And I was sort of looking at it and ended up getting on board. And about 6 months later, this guy who's a very well-known American distiller comes back, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's great to have you back." And he goes, "Yeah, I've been in South America setting up a distillery there. I'm working for them." And then he contacted me privately and said, "Who are you and what are you doing on our group?" And I was like, I'm just a guy in Adelaide and Australia doing some stuff with a rotovap, and I've got a still coming and still learning, and I'm distilling all these separate botanicals. Why is that?" And he goes, "Well, this is an South American industry forum set up for people who've been in the industry for 20 or 30 years. We're all high-end distillers." And I was like, "So sorry, I don't know how I got into this group. I got accepted. I'm like the baby. I'm a baby, and I've hardly distilled for more than a year and a half, etc. That's fine. Just kick me out." And then he came back to me and he said, "No, it's really interesting because you're doing what Australia is in a headspace that America was in the 80s and 90s, and now corporatization and marketing and dollars have taken over. All of this experimentation's gone. The stuff that you're doing, we all love, and we want to be doing again. You're actually inspiring us to do more things." I was like, "Oh, cool." But I'll jump out. And they're like, no, we want you to stay here. So it's really good. You'll ask some questions, and you've got these guys that have been in the industry for 30 years that rattle off a whole line of stuff. And I'm sitting there going, I know what 90% of this is, but this other 10%, what the? And it really gets your brain ticking away. So... But no, the industry is just full of fantastic people. So traveling wise, it'd be anywhere really. That's a tough question. Yeah.
And what's next? So you're just releasing the.
Yep. So we've got this little guy here, labelless at the moment. So
Rare Plum.
I'm hoping to launch that one for World Gin Day. But if anyone from MCC Print is listening or watching, then come on, guys. Come on, give me a hand up here. No, I just need my labels done by then. But sort of probably mid-June, that one will be. I'm looking at my calendar over there. Mid-June, hopefully we'll launch that one. If not, a bit earlier if I'm lucky, World Gin Day.
Right.
So that is a gin-based, similar to this one, to our signature gin. And then we've added hibiscus, and then it sits on the Davidson plums for 4 months. So basically, and then a little bit of sugar as well. So organic raw sugar, just to get rid of the tartness of the plums as well. So yeah, it was interesting. I've got, I think 500 litres of that I put down, added the plums, macerated them in the tank the next day when they defrosted, and then came back 2 weeks later, tried it and went, "Oh shit, what have I done? I've just wasted 500 litres of gin." I thought, I'll just leave it. Came back a month later. I was like, "Oh God, that tastes like shit." 2 months later, still tastes like shit. It's like, well, I've done it now, and just sort of left it in the corner, and then started working on another recipe. And then it got to that 3 month point, and all that bitterness had died off from because we hadn't put sugar in it at that point. So it was just the natural sugars in the gin turn all that bitterness into a nice sweetness, and all of a sudden the earthiness of the plums come through. So within that left it there for 4 months, and that 3 months, it's like, holy shit, this is really good. So it was, it was a bit of a worry for a while there, but.
So do you think you'd be able to replicate that again?
Oh yeah, I've done everything so I can replicate it. It's just it is a 4 month period. Like I put another lot down yesterday because I'm worried that the first batch might sell out too quickly, and then everyone's got to wait another 3 months. So.
Is there any sort of environmental concerns with that? Because putting something down for a period of time, given we've been through the wettest period in living memory, how do you think that would affect the product, or has it affected the product in any way?
Hasn't affected. It needs that 4 months for that sweetness to come through in the plums. But you make a good point there. So we work with 2 Aboriginal communities. It was a local Aboriginal store here, and through them we work with 2 farms in New South Wales. So that's where we get the plums from. And I'm sort of looking at it going, okay, literally the day I bought 100 kilograms of plums, I had to go out and spend $600 on the deep freeze, because it's literally a 2-body deep freeze. And then I said to them, okay, if this goes well, I'm going to need some more plums. And they're like, oh, the farms got flooded, So there's no plums at the moment. We've got about 40 kilograms. I was like, all right, put my name on those 40 kilograms. So it's a bit stressful. And when something like that happens, all of a sudden you release a product and then you can't make it again. But we do still have, I've probably got 80 kilograms of plums sitting there still for that should do us for the year, I think. And that's one of the big things for me is getting stuff in season. So we will, certain fruits, we will treat a different way. So there's a certain fruit, we'll get in 300 kilograms of it, dehydrate it. We use the whole fruit, and then that gets added to the gin basket. So I know, that's like one of the worst 2 weeks of my life when we get that 300 kilograms of fruit in. You've got to cut it all up and dehydrate it. We've got a commercial dehydrator, but it's like every day for 12 hours a day, you're just cutting and drying fruit. We've got that with 2 fruits actually, which is not great. And they are seasonal. So you could get them from the US, but I want to use locally grown stuff. So we get it all from local growers. To the point, which is the other point of the 20-acre farm. So we're looking at getting contracts with local farms up in the hills near where our distillery is going to be, and just saying we need 300 to 500 kilograms of this every year, and it'll get to the point where they'll just say, right, that crop is yours. You own those trees, you own that, and we get that fruit every year, which is great because it keeps them. I suppose they've then got a locked-in contract per year where they know they're getting all of this business. And I want to grow a lot of that out on our own as well, because we are certified organic. Everything we do is sustainable. So like we grow our own kaffir limes, and I think for the last, I probably put them in 2.5 years ago, and the limes are always about that big. And then we started taking the whatever's left in the still from when we're finished distilling, we then put that, it's probably about 3% alcohol. So we then pour that onto the garden where we're growing everything, and then everything out of the gin baskets. We've got an internal gin basket and then an external one. That all gets macerated up and put onto the plants as compost. And our kaffir limes, as of this week, are about this big. They are like freaking huge. So everything, there is no waste in our distillery, which I love as well. And that's the big thing about having the farm, is being able to go from paddock to glass, no waste. You shouldn't be sticking food scraps in a bin. If you've got plants, you want to grow stuff, because it's free compost and they go through the roof of the growth cycles and things. So, yeah. And the flavors we've noticed as well, like a lot of the herbs and things we grow, like literally, I'll charge up the still, and then whatever's going in the carter head, I literally walk out into the garden and pick everything, put it in, and it goes straight in. So you're distilling something that was picked 30 minutes ago, and that freshness and that flavor and that aroma that comes off of it's so much better than you're going to buy in a dehydrated, dried bag of whatever it is, So we love that freshness.
Yeah. Wow, that is cool. I think I'm hogging all the questions. Todd, off you go.
You're saying you're working with the Indigenous community. Do they help you source some unique, locally acquired botanicals?
Yeah, well, that's the Davidson plums at the moment. So they are a native Australian plum. We will put some trees in, but the place where the farm's going to be in Ashton gets a little frosty. So from what I've read, we should be able to grow something, but the trees will also, they get so bloody tall. The fruit grows on the trunk of the tree. It's quite an odd fruit. And then they basically shake the trees till they drop off. When they drop off, they're ripe. They're ready to eat. So so at the moment, we're I like the fact that we're supporting those farms as well. And we probably, even when we grow our own, we will still be using theirs as well. So a bit of both.
Are there any other sort of Indigenous influences that you want to bring into a future release?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of it is, going back to that Australiana, a lot of people have been doing it already. So it's a matter of looking at something new as well. And I love the fact, I wish, like I said, I wish I could get all of my botanicals and everything. We do buy our botanicals from an Australian dealer, but a lot of them need to come from overseas. So I wish we could grow all of that stuff in Australia. You're supporting Australian farms and whatnot. There are definitely some other Indigenous things that we're going to look to use in the future. The hard thing is getting that continuous supply as well, because of weather, because a lot of them they're natively grown. So they are farms as such, but they're still natively grown. and they pick them off the land. So you can't sort of guarantee you're going to get 100 kilograms every year, which is a bit of a worry. So once again, it comes back to that whole commercial thing. Not that we'll ever be a 4 pillars, but the worst thing for me would be to release this great gin, and then all of a sudden the next year you can't make it because you don't have X, Y, Z you need to go with it. So, which is why most distilleries and most gins you come out with, they are quite, I wouldn't say standardized, but they will use things that you're going to get a lot of, orange peel, lemon peel, all that sort of stuff. Whereas I will
Safe
do that.
ingredient.
Yeah, whereas I'm the opposite. I tend to like making something a little different, and it's not safe. So there is that business risk there, but I like the fact that it is a little different.
Yeah, wow.
And doing it with a smile all the time.
Yeah, it's weird. I said to someone the other day, they said, "Do you have any regrets?" And I said, "Oh, go to my grave with no regrets, because this has been the best and the most hectic 3 years of my life." And not once have I worried. I do worry because I've got to pay my mortgage. I'm not paying myself a wage, and I probably won't be for the next 2 years. So financially, it's just like this. You get all these invoices paid. And you're like, yes, I've got money, and it's like, oh, hang on, I've got $3,000 of bottles to order. I've got more this, more that, and it's gone the next day, and then some. So financially, it's tough, but it's just, I don't know. Especially for me, being sustainable and organic, it's something that we spend a lot more money than other distilleries do on product and packaging as well. But at the end of the day, that for me was a cost from day one. That's the cost of doing business. I've got 2 young kids, and I like the fact that I always said if I started up a manufacturing business, it's got to be something that's not going to be detrimental to the environment. So that does unfortunately come at a cost. It shouldn't. But it
does. You. I think on the whole sustainability side, that's somewhere that we're all going to end up having to go. So you're going to have a head start on the rest of us in the end anyway, because obviously
it's like with cooling your still. If you've got a big enough water supply, it's hard. If you're distilling every day, you're obviously going to need a chiller to cool it down, but you can circulate that water. Whereas there's some distilleries that I know will literally turn the tap on, it all goes down the drain. That's been the norm for a long time. But that water's been warmed to, however many degrees. There's nothing wrong with it. So, makes it. There are things that you can do that make it sustainable, make your business more sustainable, that don't cost the earth. But it does make things tougher. It's when you come into, you want to distill 2 days in a row, and you're holding tanks of water is still at 30 degrees, and you're kind of screwed. So then you end up setting up a thermo fan with big radiators, and you're going, well, now I'm running electricity. It's like, well, I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. But we've got a 55,000 litre water supply at the moment, and that never gets warm. So that does the job. Yeah.
So is there any sort of one little thing that you think from a sustainability standpoint isn't done enough, but is relatively easy and inexpensive to do, that you think every distillery should get on board with?
Yeah, for me, it would be that cooling water, definitely. Yeah. It's difficult because it takes space. You've got to have tanks, or you have smaller tanks and you chill it overnight, and then you're using electricity again. So for me, the idea of having a farm is having space. Like the landlord, I was up there yesterday, I can't remember, the days blend into each other, talking to him about putting tanks in. He's just like, we'll stick a 25,000 litre tank there, and we'll put another one here. You can have a whole row because there's the room and whatnot, and they're cheaper. I'm thinking in the last 2 years, the properties I've been looking at were farms, which were not affordable, and then warehousing. So warehousing, you've got big slimline tanks. So I've been looking at slimline tanks. You're spending $20,000 on tanks, and it's like, hang on, a round one's a quarter of the price. So it's having his support's been really good as well. He's 100% on board with what we're doing, the sustainability, organics, and everything, which has been great. But yeah, it's not if you've got the room, it's not hard to do that. I can understand for everyone. There's a lot of distilleries that you see that are in little warehouses, and it's like, how do you do that? How do you store that amount of water for a 500 litre, 1,000 litre still? Because you need a lot.
Yeah, right. That is an interesting one, particularly with at the moment we don't seem to have a shortage of water.
We will. Yeah. At the time, it'll all disappear.
Oh, absolutely. La Nina will disappear. El Nino will come in and we'll be stuffed again.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, technically, we're out of drought in New South Wales. It's just been announced, which is like, holy hell.
You've gone from one extreme to the other overnight.
Yeah. Oh,
Pretty
absolutely.
much.
Yeah.
Can I just say, Crafty, you look really fucking cold.
I am, mate. I'm
I'm
freezing.
feeling cold watching him. He's making me cold. It's bloody warm here.
Look at that
So-
t-shirt.
I need to reconsider what I'm bringing with me tomorrow. Is what you're telling me?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a cold weekend.
You're not wearing our jacket though, so that's a bit disappointing.
No, because I'm working.
Oh, okay.
Isn't it funny?
I thought it was a working jacket that you bought us.
Well, yeah, it'll become a working jacket, but not this stage. Sorry, Stuart, you're going to say?
Funny, when you're in a distillery and it's wintertime and you're distilling, you huddle up around near the still because it's warm, but you've got other things to do. So you're always freaking cold. Come summertime and you're running that still, it's like you're sweating your balls off because it's so bloody hot. It's like you can't win.
Yeah. Stay away from it for sure.
I know.
And yes, it's Whiskey Day this weekend, isn't it? And
It is.
There'll certainly be the big do out at Blackgate, which we went to last year.
Yeah.
Was it last year?
Last year.
Before?
Yeah,
Last
yeah.
We were there
That
last
was
year.
fucking cold. Oh my god, that was fucking cold.
That'll be good.
They're big roaring fires.
Ah,
Lots of
absolutely.
fires. Yeah.
Just not around you still.
No, you don't get anywhere near it.
Actually, that would be nice. Cold weather, sitting in front of a fire with whiskey. You can't go wrong, can you? Really?
No. Well, that's the thing for me. Whiskey is more of a winter drink because it is very warming and it's comfy and it's homey, and I use gin as my summer, fresh, floral, light, refreshing. I've been stocking up on my gins, as you can see from the bottom shelf there, that I've run out of room on.
Where's our bottle?
Well, you haven't posted it to me yet. My order's in.
Actually, I've with our signature gin, because I made it. I mean, you make it. I wanted to make it for a neat sipping gin, but also it's going to go with tonic. But we tend to find it sells quite well in winter because a lot of whiskey drinkers. Like one thing I love is at those shows, like in Sydney, you get the wife said, "My God, this gin's fantastic," and then you go to the husband, "Do you want to try?" And it's like, "Oh, he won't try gin. He can't stand gin." It's like, "Excellent, come over here. We've got a gateway gin for you." So it's like pour it for them neat. And they drink it. It's like, I can drink that neat. That's fantastic. Mix it with tonic. No, I don't want tonic. Mix it with tonic, something else. So then that's what I find in winter. A lot of husbands are drinking our gin neat. We've had some email complaints about that from the wives. Literally.
Did you notice a proportional difference between the men and women at Gin Palooza?
That's interesting. Like I online sales, 95% of our online sales go to New South Wales, and 95% of those sales are female. Mm-hmm. Whereas at Gin Palooza, there was a good amount of males there as well. Yeah, I mean you do get larger groups of women that will come in because they're all gone with friends and husbands don't drink gin, but I think that is changing. Definitely, I think more men are drinking gin. And I think that's probably thanks to maybe barrel-aged gins and things like that are a little less floral and a bit more. They've got a bit more meat to them, maybe. Be the reason.
Yeah. I just always find that interesting. The gender divide between the dark and light spirits. If you will.
And that's what I was going to ask. What do you guys notice at whiskey shows? Is it mainly men?
I was just thinking about that. It is a lot more predominant men.
Yeah,
there's certainly a good contingent of women there, but I think you could certainly say the majority would be men.
Yeah, it's probably
the women
70.
that are there.
70%.
70-30.
I'd say 70-30. But what I would say is the average age over the years has declined because it used to be back in the early 2000s used to be 90% male and 80% of those males were above 60. So it's definitely moved to a younger audience for sure, and Jen would be a younger audience as well. I would imagine.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're a premium spirit, so you sort of, I was warned in the beginning saying, well, young people won't buy your gin, whereas majority of people that buy our gin, well, not the majority, but there is a good number of young people that will buy it because they would much rather buy a premium spirit and they're not going out to get smashed and enjoy it and save it and really enjoy it. It's like, this bottle is worth what I'm paying for it because I know what's going into it. The sustainability helps with that as well. But it is interesting with whiskey. I was at the ADA conference and there was a girl there that was handed a glass of whiskey. She never drunk whiskey before and she's drinking it. And I'm watching her face as I'm talking to her. I said, you're really not enjoying that, are you? And she goes, oh, Christ, it feels like I'm, drinking liquid cigars or something. And then I turned around to the bar. I can't remember what cocktail I got her. Oh, it was a whiskey sour. Got her a whiskey sour. And I said, have that. And within 30 seconds, it was gone. She's like, my God, that's fantastic. I never thought I'd like whiskey. So I think when you're going to introduce someone to something, you've got to, step lightly and work your way up. Whiskies, gin predominantly is mixed with things. You can have a gin where you don't even taste the gin that's all tonic. You can have it with a juice. You can have it in a cocktail. With whiskey, there is always that backbone of whiskey there, which people have to get used to, I suppose. So it is a lot more, I don't know what the word is, controversial or something than, say, a gin is or a white spirit.
A lot more polarizing.
Yeah,
that's
the word I'm looking for. Yeah, exactly. Whereas some of my favorite cocktails are whiskey cocktails. I love a good gin sour. It's fantastic. But then, a whiskey sour. But then, I'll go out or some nights I'll sit here and I'll just be in the distillery drinking and eat whiskey. It's, each to their own.
There you go. There's a good tip for the newbies. Don't start with Isla. Yeah, when it's like you're licking an ashtray off a hot tar road, probably not the best place to start your whiskey journey, no.
My first introduction to whiskey was when I was 12. My dad's got this really old cellar, and because he used to work for Penfolds, he's got some crazy stuff in there, and there was this bottle of whiskey, and I remember saying to my mate, we were 12 years old, saying to my mate, let's try this whiskey, and I still don't know if my dad's realised that bottle's open. It must be so bloody old. And it was from like the 1940s or something, and it was like battery acid. It was like, holy crap. For so many years, just the smell of whiskey. It was like, oh, I'm going to be sick.
Yeah, but we've all had those initial experiences. I mean, for me, Jack, Jim, and Johnny are very bad men.
Yeah.
Very, very bad men. And I struggled for a very long time before I could even smell them again.
Yeah.
Let alone taste them.
Definitely. Yeah. That's what I ask people when they say they don't like gin. It's like, so what sort of experience have you had? They go, oh, I was, 18 years old. And it's like, okay. Things have changed. Yeah. Gin's different. And I think that's the thing with spirits as well. It's like for rums, whiskies, gins, they're not what they used to be. There's a lot of, that craft distillation brings out a whole different flavor and different profiles that we never had in the past, And if you tried a whiskey like that, God, it would have cost you an arm and a leg. So, it's really interesting what the industry's done.
Yeah. Well, certainly that's something I'm trying to instill in my my team, quality rather than quantity.
Yeah.
However, then you do want to have a large quantity of that quality, and it gets a bit expensive, but I guess that works out.
I was impressed with my son. He's 14, and all of a sudden he sort of wants to be involved with the distillery. And it's like, I'm going to leave school and come and work for you. It's like, no, you're finishing school, then you're going to do a trade, then you can come and work for me. And he's like, what trade am I going to do? He loves welding, and he's like, oh, if I learned how to weld, could I make steels? I was like, mate, if you want to start up a steel business, I'll back you 100%. It's like,
absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So, and he was saying to me, because he loves tonic, he loves bitter things. He said, can I have a try of your gin? I was like, yes, but you're going to try it neat. And he's like, what? No, I like tonic. And it's like, well, you go drink tonic. If you're going to have a sip of gin, I want you to try it neat. and he tried it neat. I said, "What are you tasting?" He picked up 14 of the 21 botanicals. I didn't even know how he knew those 14 things were. I was amazed. So he's definitely coming to work with me later on when he's old enough. He's got a good palate.
Yeah, and definitely if he wanted to get into the welding and the still making, it's certainly an industry that needs more people in it, because just to segue ever so slightly, oh crap, where is it? Here. So we are sponsored by Burns Welding and Fabrication, and they can't take any. Or well, when we spoke to them, they couldn't take any more customers.
No, they can't, unfortunately.
So there's certainly an opening for a budding young still maker to get into the industry and make his mark. Most certainly. For that matter, if he was a woodworker, barrel making, cooper, we desperately need more coopers. It's a dying art, and there's just not enough of them in. So if he could actually do both of those, that'd probably be a really good start.
All right,
if he can become a master cooper and a still maker, he'll be a legend in his own lunchbox. Guaranteed. So we've got Youngie, Wyandotte Cooperage, and Transwood Master Coopers as sponsors. Thank you, guys. Often we see Youngie online. He's not today. There you go. William Rule. Don't call us. We'll call you.
And our other sponsors?
So Wild Wogan Water. He's got lots of water. He's got plenty.
And it's all natural.
Where is he based?
New South Wales based. It's up in the mountains, isn't it, Crafty? That's where you get your water from.
Yeah, Great Dividing Range, basically. Yeah,
Can he ship it to Adelaide? Will he ship it to Adelaide?
I'm sure if you asked, yes.
I'm sure he would. Oh, I would hate to know the price, but
yeah, the freight cost is exorbitant, that's for sure.
Get a tanker and fill one of those new 25,000 litre tanks you're going to get.
Talking about sustainability and all.
Saver glass for your bottles, most certainly. You get your bottles from there too as well, don't you, Crafty?
I do indeed. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Great
then your labels from CCL.
CCL. Yep. One of the great supporters in the industry. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we've actually got, and I think we're quite lucky to have been sponsored by some of the most prominent and well-respected suppliers in their fields. And of course, we can't forget Robbie at Barrel Brokers, who we're going to have on in a month or so, I think, as well, talking about all things barrels and wood.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Really cool. But yeah, definitely, if you need a barrel, talk to Transwood or Youngie at Wyandotte. They may not be able to help you, but you should talk to them first. Yeah. And of course, Burnsy, he can the worst he'll do is tell you to go away. I think. Save your last and CCL. They'll always have time for you. Not a problem. While working, plenty of water. And I believe Robbie does have plenty of barrels left too. So yeah, certainly hit them up for all your barrel needs.
I think you've done a good job there, Luke.
Yeah,
Did I? All right.
I think you missed your calling, mate.
Was it a smooth
We do appreciate all of our sponsors.
Very smooth.
Like to slip it in where people can't fast forward that bit.
Yeah.
Which is all of it, I'm sure.
It's like the bit at the end of the movie where you fast forward through the titles and then you get the credits and you get the little bit at the end.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Maybe if we do end up putting our sponsors at the end, we then need to have a mid-sponsor little scene snippet teaser for the next episode, just to leave people sitting there waiting in the theatre.
The next Alcoholic Avengers movie.
Who's it going to be?
Yeah. That's it. What would our Alcoholic Avengers be called?
Ooh.
That'll come to me at 3 a.m.
DTs.
It wouldn't be Marvel.
I'm shaking. Be marvelous. The marvelous DTs. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. We'll have bloopers. No. This entire fucking podcast is bloopers. We don't edit it when it goes out, so you see it warts and all. And
the good bits you might put up as these are the good bits.
Yeah. Whisketeers. That sounds like cat food. Sorry, Will. I'm getting Whiskers feels there. That's all right. We'll workshop it. And then we've got an artist who did our coasters. Fuck, my light is just blown out like.
White light you're holding up there, Luke.
I know. Look at it. It's blank. We've got an artist. He'll fill
Just
that.
Imagine
spot.
there was a lot of great art on it. It's fantastic.
Let me turn this light off. Fucking struggling with this today. There we go.
Moving away.
No, still.
You turned the wrong light off.
I turned all my lights off.
Well, that's getting there. That's getting better.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah. I had it there.
Oh, sort of.
Put it
Check
on
out
there.
our Facebook page. It's on there.
Yeah, time to put it away.
Who's that?
Speaking of Facebook, you're on Facebook and Insta.
Yep. Little Juniper Distilling.
Little Juniper Distilling and littlejuniper.com.au. There it is, right there.
Sign up to our email list. We promise we won't spam you, and you'll find out when our new gin's coming out and see the progress of the distillery. Yeah.
And of course, you can buy directly from the website.
You can.
And
you sign up to our email
is-
list, you get 10% off your first purchase. There you go.
Oh, fuck, I didn't do that.
Oh, idiot.
Are you
I
sure signed
I
up?
just paid full whack.
Excellent. That's good for me.
Ask for a credit, Luke, and put it back in. Start again.
I'll send you a couple of bottles of tonic to make up for it. There you go.
That's it. How much is Sweats going
Maybe
for?
some of that butterfly pea. The butterfly pea. I'll send you some of that. It'll be in a little vial though, so don't throw it out. You might not notice it.
Don't drink it all at once. Yeah.
Look, I think butterfly pea is going to be the next big thing. I think.
Not in the way that you think.
No.
So, yes, you can jump on to littlejuniper.com.au, jump on the socials, buy a bottle. It looks amazing from the photography, which you did as well. So all the photography, all the art is all yours. I believe.
Yeah, I've had some help along the way with a couple of things. Yeah.
And the trained butterfly is just a really amazing touch. So yeah, thank you very much. We've hit the hour and a half mark. I'm sure you've had a big day. Thank you very, very much for joining us, especially at the last minute.
No.
So yeah, thank you very much. There you go. You got a thumbs up from Jonathan Harris.
Thumbs up. Yeah, that was good, Stuart. It was excellent. That was a deep dive, very deep dive.
Very much so.
And I'm certainly wanting to have a further chat with you about the vacuum distillation side of things. I think that's an area that we can. It's not a lot of people are doing it here in Australia.
No, it's not a lot.
And I think that's something that is obviously really unique to you, or very unique to you. And I reckon that's something quite special to certainly get into a little bit more on a future session.
Well, the next year when we've got the cellar door set up, we'll have 2 gin schools. So one will be a traditional gin school, and then there'll be a technical gin school, which is if distillers want to come in and learn how to use a vacuum still, we'll teach them how to use a vacuum still and help get them set up and whatnot. So yeah.
Wow. Actually, how accessible are vacuum stills?
Well, I mean, you can buy a cheap Chinese one, but I wouldn't, because you're running food through it, and a lot of them aren't food grade. So you really want to use a German one. They're not exactly cheap, but yeah, I mean, what you can do with them is pretty unique as well.
Yeah. So don't pick one up off AliExpress.
No, I wouldn't recommend it. No.
Okay,
Unless you
no
want to poison your
AliExpress.
customers. Because you're running a vacuum and you've got a pump that's pulling air through, which is going to end up touching your food, and they are not. But a lot of them will use oil, so you end up, not healthy, not good.
Right. Okay. We'll bear that in mind. I'm now not going to buy one off AliExpress. There's another question. Did Burnsy build one?
I know the guys at Archie Rose have got a 500 litre and a 1,000 or a 3,000 litre one. That's next level stuff. I spoke to them and they spent substantial amount of money with Italian engineers, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because that was my plan, to do a full scale copper vacuum still until I spoke to those guys, and now it's like, yeah. That's a future problem, well and truly future. Like,
yeah, right.
Would you wait for investors?
Anytime soon, yeah, exactly. When I win lotto, not that I buy tickets, but yeah,
got to be in it to win it, and I'm not.
No.
Well, we've kept on going, but thank you again. Thank you very much. It's been lovely to chat with you more, and certainly I was very glad to be able to get you on today. For all of our regulars, if you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed on iTunes, on Facebook, liked us on Facebook, feel free to leave a review and all those things, because they help us to get this out to more people. And we're actually starting to see a bit of an uplift through YouTube now. People actually watching on YouTube Live and commenting through YouTube Live, which is awesome. So yeah, that's quite
Who would
cool.
want to sit there and watch us for an hour and a half, though? That's what I don't understand.
Oh, wouldn't they?
I've had fun. I'm on the other end. Hey, come on.
Yeah, but you're the interesting part. Then there's
Yeah,
the
I
And
don't
then
think
there's the other 3 mugs.
apparently people sit and listen to us in their car on a long road trip, and I just think
And
that's
we don't
dangerous.
put them to sleep. That's
I
amazing.
was going to say that is dangerous with my dulcet tones. Yeah, fall asleep.
Very fucking dangerous. So yeah, I don't believe we've been responsible for any accidents yet.
Yet. No one was
Maybe
left to tell a
Possibly a
story.
few road rage instances.
So yes, thank you very much. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we're back in 2 weeks. I should have looked at the calendar before starting to say what we were doing next. I'm not even logged into my calendar on my computer. Who have we got next, Crafty? You're the control of the calendar.
If they don't turn up, you've got my number. There you go.
Oh no, it's Lindsay. I mentioned that earlier.
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Definitely.
26.
Yeah,
Lindsay. Sorry, Lindsay.
26. Lindsay. Yeah,
Oh,
Lindsay still comes from down Gin Lane. That will be, well, I mean, look, that man loves gin. He's built a whole business around it as well, but from the other side, on the selling and distribution side and promotion. So I think it'd be really interesting. Buy a bottle of that, and yeah, look, we'll see whether Lindsay has spots in his schedule. We'll see. So, Crafty, you won't be with us next for that one though.
Yep. Off
Better
that
things
one.
to do. So we'll see whether we can find another guest presenter to fill Crafty's very big glasses.
Love it.
Bye.
See you guys.
There, guys.
Good to chat. Cheers.